these family images here. And I'm going to show you, my images look just like yours do on a camera, okay? They're flat. The sky was really blown out. And this is actually underexposed. What's important to me is that I have focus and depth of field. The exposure, the white balance, none of that's important. We can fix all that in post as long as we're capturing on RAW, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do in Lightroom is I'm going to look at this image. And what we're going to try to do first is get an image that we wish we would have gotten out of camera, okay, or as close to it, before we apply anything, actions, plugins, anything like that. We are going to have better luck if we're using those things only on an image that's already great. So the first thing I see about this is it's underexposed, okay? And we're going to drop the sky in up here, so I don't care about this detail. I'm going to up the exposure on this image. Excuse me. Anytime I up the exposure, we lose black, and black is detail. So I'm going to go down to my blacks in Lightroom and lower it until we see detail come back in. I'm going to straighten out my horizon line, which is right here. Okay, and I see these really pretty highlights in the kid's hair and in her hair here. Typically what people will do is I want to accentuate those. They would go to the highlights slider in Lightroom, which is right here. That only adjusts exposure. I want to adjust not only the exposure on those highlights, but the color. And in order to do that, I'm going to go down to the curves slider in Lightroom. I'm going to up the highlights here, and now you see the highlights really start to pop out on the hair and around, you know, the outline of the subject, and add a little bit of color. From here, I'm ready to go into Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Photo, Edit in Photoshop CC. And we're going to wait for it to render, and then we're going to grab a sky. And I shoot my skies a little bit different. I'll show you how we do that. Now, this is a sky from the native scene, so this was the sky that was here. I purposely blur my skies in camera at an aperture of about 4, and then I underexpose them to bring out the details. That way, when we do it, this image was captured at 1.2, so we have the spin focus plane. We're going to have a blurred sky to put in here so that it snaps in. If we put one in with a lot of detail, it wouldn't make any sense. The sky should be blurred at an aperture this large at 1.2, okay? That's why I go ahead and I blur them in camera. So that's why it looks like this. I'm going to go ahead and take this into Photoshop. I'm going to go to Photo, Edit in Photoshop CC. Okay. I got to make sure my. Are you pretty proficient with layers?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Great. Okay.
I've actually done a webinar with Lisa Holloway and Meg Bitton before.
Okay, they're both very good friends of mine. In fact, we're supposed to be doing a workshop in Las Vegas if Meg gets the permits.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, that should be coming in April, hopefully. Otherwise, I think maybe just Lisa and I will do one. We talked about Boulder, but I talk to them every day.
Oh, I did a Raleigh workshop with Lisa as well.
Oh, that wasn't too long ago, was it?
Yeah, that was actually just a few months ago.
Yeah, because I remember when she went. So,
yeah.
Okay, so back to the tutorial. I've got my sky open in here, okay? Over here I've got my foreground. When I'm working, I like to pretend that I'm working on a table, okay? So in my mind, I'm working on a table, and I'm using an X-Acto knife and masking tape and all those things. By default, Photoshop gives us this little table back here to work on. That table needs to be bigger so we can fit 2 images on it and move them around, okay? So the next thing I'm going to do is go to Image, Canvas Size. By default, my width is 24, my height is 16. I'm going to make those numbers bigger. And however big you make them doesn't matter. As long as we have plenty of space, like this now, I'm going to zoom out to move our background and our foreground together. From there, I'm going to come grab my foreground. I'm going to unlock the layer by double tapping, grab my Move tool, put my Move tool on the image, and drag it into the sky layer. I don't let up on it, and I pull it back down, and then I let up, and there it is. So now we have our sky behind that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my foreground layer and I'm going to put a mask on it. So this is a white mask. It shows everything. But everywhere I take black paint here and paint across it, it's going to show what's behind it. From here, I'm going to grab a brush, okay? I always use the 4th brush in Photoshop CC, or 5th, sorry. I get it about 2/3 the size of the screen at an opacity of 100. And what we're trying to do here is take the skyline out and put it back in with no haloing. And in order to do that, we have to blend exposures. We can't just select and put it in there because then you'll have this jagged sky that won't look right. So this is how we do it. 100% soft brush. I take it completely across the skyline until it all gets out. We're not worried about our subject right now. We're only worried about getting the skyline in that looks natural. From here, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to switch back to my white brush, soft, lower the opacity to about 13. And we're going to take white across it now at a lower opacity so that we can get a better feel of where our foreground skyline is. So I'm going to swipe it across, and there it comes in. Okay? We can see our foreground skyline here, faded, and we can see the skyline from the sky photo in the back. What we want to do now is take our brush, move to 100% opacity, and go across the background skyline in order to put the foreground skyline back in. We want to stay away from the top skyline with the soft brush because what it'll do will start to halo, and that's exactly what we're trying not to do. So from here, I've taken that out. Now everything below it, I want to put back into the 100% white, 100% opacity by painting white over the map. Okay, so there, that starts to come in pretty nice. There's going to be some places up here like the end of this road I want to go ahead and put back in. I'm going to tap that in. That was too much. That got a little haloing, so I'm going to step back. Just give a little dab right there. And then one more with 100% opacity pass just to make sure I didn't miss anything on any of my subjects. And now we're going to step out and look at this, okay? And I'm going to crop. We're going to get rid of this useless space around here because we've got our sky right where we need it. And then I'm going to go ahead and probably crop right down to here. And we're going to come in and take a look at this. First thing we see is we have this line coming across the foreground from the original image. We want to bring that up so we have a smooth gradient without a line going through it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to select my foreground here. I'm going to grab my select tool, rectangular select tool. I'm just going to go across that white. I don't want to go into the foreground because when we stretch this up, that'll come with it. We don't want it to. So I'm going to go to Edit after I select, Transform, and Scale. And I'm going to pull it straight up to the top. That got rid of our line, okay? But now I'm going to come back to my mask, switch to a black brush at 100% opacity, and take that completely out. All right? Next thing we have to do is we have to start to get this skyline in here a little better. And in order to do that, we're going to go back to our original image, and we're going to look at it here. We're going to put it in with a darken layer. And in order to do that, I have to go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness, okay? I want to get this skyline as dark as we can, that sky as white as we can. I'm going to lower the brightness, up the contrast, and this is going to work. From here, I'm going to take this image, pull it into our comp here, snap it right over the top, and I'm going to switch my mode to darken, blending mode to darken. This gets our skyline in really neat over here, up here in the back, but it darkens the foreground. What we need to do is mask it out now. I'm going to mask, and I'm going to invert my mask to black, and I'm going to switch to a white brush. And now anywhere we paint with a white brush is going to put that skyline right back in. Okay, so there that goes. I do want to switch to black a little bit, lower the opacity, and just take the dark off the end of this road. And I'm going to go ahead and flatten this image. Doing one of Lisa's, she leaves her stuff open. She doesn't flatten. I'm a flattener because if I have that, if I have the ability to go back and change something, I tend to overwork it. So it's just a habit that I got myself in a long time ago. And I make so many of these that I just kind of know when I'm there. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten this. It looks like our skyline came in pretty nice, but we're still not done with it. Okay. In Nebraska, there's a lot of humidity and things that come off the crops. And if you look at the real skyline in Nebraska, you'll see this haze. And it took me a long time to figure that out. Why was the skyline kind of blending into the sky, or why was it so powdery? So what I'm going to do now is actually add that haze. I'm going to grab a transparent layer. I'm going to grab white with my soft brush, and I'm going to switch my opacity to 100%. 2/3 the size of the screen, I'm going to take it right over the center of the skyline. And from here, I'm going to lower my opacity to probably right there about 11%. This brings our skyline in really nice with the sky, but it does something else. It also allows us to separate our subjects from the background, okay, and that gives us a better depth of field. I'm going to put a mask on here, grab my black brush now to 100%, and very careful, I'm going to paint it off of the subject. And now we're going to have this nice contrast between the subject and the background. Are you with me there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're going to make sure we get all that white paint off, and then we're going to step out and have a quick look at this. And I'll show you how this separates the subject from the background. These smaller details are kind of tough here, and I'm using a Wacom tablet. Okay, and then from here I'm going to take my brush again. Oops. And just so that there's a smoother gradient, I'm going to take this right across here, right across the subject plane. So there's another way of getting our skyline in, okay, and separating our subject from the background. I'm going to go ahead and flatten. And we're going to do one other thing, because this is pretty jagged back here, the skyline. I'm going to duplicate, and I'm going to go to Filter, and I'm going to use a program called Alien Skin Bokeh 2 that you can buy from Alien Skin. I don't work for them. I just enjoy using their product because it's really great. I set my bokeh amount just slight. And when I'm doing this, I'm only looking at this skyline here, okay? So now I'm going to mask it, okay? You can see it put the blur over this whole screen. I'm going to put a white mask on it. I'm going to invert that, Control-I, because black will hide it. I'm going to grab my white brush, and I'm going to paint wherever I want the blur, which is straight across the skyline in the back. And now let's look up close at the image. This all starts to come together, and it's not really dynamic. We're going to work on light dynamics, but what we really wanted was an image that we wish we would have gotten out of camera, and this is pretty close to how it is, okay, meaning I wish there was a camera right now that was dynamic enough to capture sky and a foreground at the same time, but there's just no such thing.
Yeah.
From here, I'm going to go ahead and flatten this, and we're going to work on the dynamics. We're going to light our subjects, okay, and the way we're going to do that is I'm going to duplicate this image. I'm going to go to Filter, and I'm going to go to Camera Raw Filter and CC. If you don't have CC or you have CS5 or Elements, you can still do it, but you have to take this back to Lightroom and then reopen it as a smart object. That's the nice thing about CC. From here, I'm going to up the exposure, looking only at my clients. I don't care about the background. And I'm going to bring my blacks down just a little bit, because every time we up exposure, we lose detail in the black. Okay? I'm going to mask out what I just did over that layer completely. I'm going to Control-I with the black. And now with white, we're going to paint across the subject plane. And I'm going to start to light them up. Because where we really want our eye to go is in the center of this. Okay? And, you know, where the subject is, or that's where we want to keep all of the focus in the image. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our eye through the image with color. We've lit the subject. I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to grab a sponge tool. Sponge tool set to saturate. Okay, the flow doesn't really matter because we're working on a separate layer, so we can just lower the opacity of this layer. I want my eye to stick around in here, and I'm not just going to add color to the entire image. I'm going to add it where we want our eye to go. And I'm going to start across these leading lines along this road. I'm going to take my saturation tool, and I'm going to paint some saturation up the lines in these roads. See that go in? Can you see that go in?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty cool because now it's taking us up through here. Okay, and we don't need to add color to the whole photograph. We just need to add it to these leading lines, and then let the color take us through the image. I'm going to go across the top of that corner. I'm going to come up here along this little bit of green. And for right now, that's really it. Maybe a few more dabs up here, but this is up to you how much you add. We just want the look of highlights coming across this. From here, I'm going to go ahead and flatten this because I like what we did. We've done a lot of things here. We've put in the sky. We've taken our our eye through the photograph with a simple tool, simple sponge tool using color. And what we're going to do now is we're going to accentuate what's important about this. And what's important about this are the subjects, okay? I want to bring out as much detail on them as I can without it looking too HDR-y. To do that, I am going to grab something called a, I'm sorry here, it's by Jessica Drazen. It's an ultra sharp details brush, and you can get that from Jessica's website. It is right here, and I think it's only $8, but I'm going to show you what it does. It brings up what looks like a high-pass filter here and a little black mask. We're going to grab our white brush, and wherever we paint, we're going to see a lot of details start to come out. So now we have to decide where we want detail. I think detail is important on some of these clothes here. So as I paint over it, you can see it come out. Backs of the jeans. Maybe the shirt, these checks can be kind of weird. You don't want to use this on skin.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing that's important is this focus plane here. In the focus plane, you can see this little thin line of dirt coming across here where we had focus. This is going to show that we shot at 1.2. Okay. And this looks really HDR-y. It's over the top. It's too much. But what we want to do is grab the opacity of that layer and lower it until it looks more natural like this. Okay?
Okay.
So everything looks good there. I like this a lot. I'm going to flatten it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at making a better format for this for the client. Okay? So this is kind of square. I want to preserve the detail in the sky and the skyline. And in order to do that, I'm going to grab a rectangular tool, select tool, go to the top, just above the client's head. I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Scale, and I'm just going to bring this down a little bit. Let's say right there. This is going to be easier to frame. I'm going to select, deselect, and I'm going to crop. And I'm probably going to bring this up a little bit too, maybe down here a little bit. This is a nice composition because we have the skyline going across the top rule of thirds there. So I'm going to leave that. Next thing we're going to do in this image is I'm going to look at something called this is Nik Color Efex Pro 4. This is a plugin from Nik Color Efex. It's owned by Google. So if you Google, it sounds weird saying this, Google Nik Color Efex 4, you can buy it from them, and it's very inexpensive. A lot of people want to know how I get this warm color to my photos. I use a vintage film overlay. It's in Color Efex Pro 4, okay? These are my settings. My settings are always set. My film strength is 7. My grain per pixel is 500. The brightness is up to you, okay? I'm going to up the saturation in this because I like it. I'm going to take some of that vignette out so it's not so strong. And then that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK on that. And that's going to put this film overlay. It makes it look a little more analog, not quite as digital camera-like, you know, more film, more dynamic. And we're going to put that over the top, and we have a finished image right here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten it. I'm going to take it into Lightroom, File, Save As. And because we opened it from Lightroom, it'll take us right back into Lightroom. Okay. And there it is. So it's a pretty big difference. It goes from this, okay, out of camera to where do we put our final? Whoops, to right here. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm in Lightroom. I'm going to come down to detail. I'm just going to sharpen it a little bit, and I'm just going to do a little bit of noise reduction. I think it prints better when we do that. Okay, and then everything else, highlight, priority, all that stuff is fine. And that's it. Finished image.
Around what time was this image shot? Do you normally, like for images like this, I mean, it looked like it could have been slightly an overcast day, but you get the nice highlighting around the subjects without losing detail, it looks like. So,
well, I did on this day. So now the sky that we actually put in there is the sky from that shoot. I mean, I couldn't expose both at the same time, so I just captured it, and I think that's probably why it looks like that. But we really did have this nice dynamic light that was coming through here. It's a little overcast, but not bad. The sun was setting back here. Now, another thing we could do on this to add it, or to make it look a little more bright because it is kind of overcast, is just take a layer of white paint. And now where the sun is setting in the back, we can go ahead and dab it right there, almost like it had a little bit of light bleed, and then lower the opacity to make it look like the sun was setting up here. And then go ahead and remove it from the subject, okay? But I'm going to show you the difference on this just from that little dab. You see how it makes it look like now we have this little more direct light in here?
Yeah.
Almost coming over the edge, and we could have put that anywhere. Now, if this was overcast, I would have used a different sky, but I still would have used a pretty sky. And if you want, I can show you an overcast image, and how we would do that. But what we can't do in there, the only thing we have to be picky about are direction of shadows, how intense is the sky we're putting in. If we don't have any highlights around the head, but we have this big bright sunset here, well, that's not realistic. We would have these shadows. So what I do is I have all these skies that I typically use, but they'd have to fit into the scene. So a sky I might use, if we didn't have any of those highlights, would probably look more like, say, this, okay, or something like that, instead of the other one where it has this really obvious directional light, okay? So that's kind of how I battle that.
Okay, so but how do you manage to get the highlight without making it look too like, what time do you normally shoot in order to get there?
I only shoot at golden hour when it's 6 p.m. Probably around 6 p.m. Depending on what time the sun goes down. I have to make sure that the light is either behind us or it's in front of us. To get these 1.2 shots, I have to expose the subject. I don't expose the background properly. I expose the subject properly, okay? And so I can't have them well lit. They actually have to be backlit. And so the sun has to be over here or behind us. Now, if it's behind us and it's lighting the subject, I can still get a great shot, but I can't get a 1-2 shot because there's too much light on the subject, and the camera will burn them out. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I would have to go up to probably an aperture of 2.8, 3. But the clients typically like these backlit photos better, okay, than the lit better, because then they have this bright shadow that comes from behind them. They're squinting and all that stuff. When they're looking at me, which they're not in this, they're walking away, but on one where they are looking at me, they're looking away from the sun, they're not squinting. I can only shoot east-west, though, okay? When we have, let's say we have a really intense backlight going down behind us, I can only shoot east-west. If I shoot north-south, one side of their body is going to be lit up, and the camera's going to expose one side properly, the other side's going to be black, the side away from the sun. So we can only shoot either east or west.
Okay.
Okay, but I only shoot in golden hour at night, so right around, just before the sun goes down.
And then how do you do it without getting hazing in your shots?
Without getting what?
Hazing, the haze.
I guess I'm not sure what that is.
The haze, okay, so for example, the other day I took my friend to the beach, and then I was shooting, and I had her backlit by the sun. And the problem is that the light leaks into my camera lens, and so her picture comes out hazy.
Oh, so you're getting sun flare.
Yeah, and I have my hood in, but obviously it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't always work, but I'll tell you what I do. I hold my camera with my right hand, I take my left, and this sounds weird, I don't use a tripod or anything, but I move the hand over the top of the lens, probably about a foot in front of it, until you can see in your viewfinder that haze start to go away. If it's so bad that I know I'm going to have to remove it in post, I can remove it in post. But it's really time-consuming, and it's very difficult. But it can certainly be done. It just depends on how much you want to take. Now, if it's completely hazed over and completely ruined, let me show you something here. I've got some examples.
So you actually cover part of your lens, like you see your hand
with my hand.
Picture?
Correct. No, you don't see your hand, but even if I did over the top, I'm going to transpose it. This was a really direct light situation right here, where it's kind of hazy, meaning I'm missing some blacks. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, but let's work on this image. Do you mind? And let's put a sky in it.
Yeah. Okay.
and then I'll show you how we can add some of this back or adjust it in post. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to straighten this out. There's a little bit of a road back here. I don't really like it. And this is a good image that we wouldn't even have to put a sky in probably, but I'm going to just to show you how to do it and to fix this little bit of lens flare, how this is washed out. We have to look at it honestly and say what's missing. Okay, what's missing is black. That's obvious. Our blacks aren't very black. They're more brown. So we go to our black slider in Lightroom, and we pull it down. Okay? Now, it's going to make everything look really underexposed, but that's okay. We're just going to up our exposure once we get our blacks where we want it. So I'm going to up my exposure now, and we can also do this in Photoshop. And what this has done is it's added contrast. And anytime we add contrast, it's going to add saturation. We don't want that to be oversaturated. So I'm going to go ahead down to my saturation and get it really flat to where we want it. Okay? I'm probably going to put some of those, take some of those blacks back out, lower the exposure a little bit. You have to mess with this to get it right where you want it. But now you see how it looks less lens flared?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, you're missing blacks. So now from here, let's take this into Photoshop and fix it. Now we have an underexposed subject, but we can lighten her in post. And I'm going to show you how we do that while putting in a sunset behind her. So I'm going to take it, open it up, and we're going to go through and make adjustments on everything we don't like. I think the first thing we need to do is put a sun in this. I'm going to pick a sunset to put behind because I don't like where you can see this little white strip of road. And we're going to try to find something that works or something that's a little too bright. I know we got something in here that's going to work. So let's do, well, let's do this one. I'm going to go ahead and open this in Photoshop. Go to Photo, Edit in Photoshop, CC. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing we did before. We've got our sky. I'm going to go to Image, Canvas size. Again, it gives us our default is 24 by 16. I'm going to make these numbers bigger. So now we have this nice table to work with, and I'm going to grab our foreground, which is right here. So we're going to do this before. I mean, we've already fixed the lens flare. Our subject is still underlit, okay, out of the camera, but we're going to fix that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a mask on this foreground layer, which is her, okay, 100%, and let's just take it out. Now we have to decide where we want this and how this is going to all work out. I actually kind of like this sun coming down back here. I'm going to make sure that this kind of blends through the back with this foreground, and then we'll probably blend it. But for right now, I like this. I'm going to grab a white brush, 100%, and we're going to take it right across the foreground here to make sure that comes back in. But she's right under there right now, okay? Next thing I'm going to do is make the sky not so big up here because I want some more of this detail. And I think to do that, all I'm going to do is grab a select tool. I'm going to duplicate the sky. Grab my rectangular select tool, grab my detail up here, go to Edit, Transform, Scale, and pull it down. I don't want to really mess with that sun too much because it'll make it look too oblong, okay? And from here, I'm going to crop. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is make my sky a little bit smaller, meaning so it can come in here. I don't want the square format, although I've been doing quite a few of those, and they do well online. I'm going to go to Scale, bring this down, get our sun up, and this gives us a little more realistic perspective if we're shooting there, or this is going to be all stretched out. I'm going to go to my foreground layer again because now you see some of this foreground or this background come in from the sun, and I'm going to grab my white brush 100%. Put our foreground in across where you see all those lines, okay? Probably going to take that. I'm just going to get this heavy line here, actually. Whoops. So make sure you're on your mask. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to my top layer of my sky, and I'm going to up the brightness on this so it fits in the scene a little bit better. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness, and this is only the sky behind her. I'm going to go ahead and up that probably right about there, and now I'm going to crop. And this sun, I'd rather have it a little bit more over in the middle, so I'm going to stretch it out again. I'm going to go to Transform, Scale. We're just going to move it to where we want it, right about there.
Wow.
Okay. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just clean this hard edge up here with my white brush and put in some more of my foreground. Okay. And now we're going to blend that sun with the sky. And the way we do that is I'm going to flatten all this first. I'm going to grab a transparent layer, white brush at 100%. Okay. And I'm going to paint all the way across her. So I'm actually going to put a haze in on this and take some of that detail out of the background and give it some more depth behind her. I'm going to mask it off, grab a black brush at 100%, and I'm going to take it off of the subject, all the white paint. That's going to separate her from the background, make it more about her. Is this helping you? Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this is starting to blend in the background, okay? I think it's a little bright. I'm going to just lower my opacity on that a little bit, but you can see now how it's separated her from the background where the sun is, okay? Next thing I'm going to do is take another layer, 100% white, very soft brush, put my sun right in the middle. I'm going to dab it, put my sun right in the middle and dab. Now we have this neat light bleed coming from the sun. I'm going to lower the opacity just so we can see a little bit of sun detail from that, and now I'm going to mask this off. And when we're done with this, we're going to paint with light, and then we're going to light our subject.
Do you use a tablet?
I do. I'm using the Wacom tablet. I couldn't live without it. Yeah, it's so important. I've noticed a lot of people don't want to adjust. And
yeah.
I really put myself through torture. I mean, I did everything on it just for a week. There was a lot of cussing. I learned to use the internet with it, everything, and now it's just an extension of my body. So literally, I couldn't live without it.
It's funny. It's good. Well, it's funny because I just started off on the tablet, so I never had to adjust.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it will really improve your workflow. So from here, I've got my sun in the back. Okay. This is all set up. I am going to do a little bit of a blur layer back here just to get a little more better depth of field. I'm going to duplicate, filter, go to my alien skin bokeh again like we did in the first one.
Okay. How much is the
alien skin bokeh? I don't know. It's probably like $200 for the whole set, but I got to tell you, it's really is an amazing program if you know how to use it. Now, if you don't want to buy it, you can also use the blur that's here in filters. Blur.
You don't like that as much?
Gaussian, I don't, because when I'm using the 8512, it puts this really neat spin on the blur, and the alien skin duplicates that. You can do it with Photoshop, but it's a lot of work, and it doesn't look as natural. Okay, I want this kind of blur, this zoom effect in here. Even though it's really slight, it's just a really small detail. From here, I'm going to take that bokeh I put on. Okay, I'm going to Control-I invert it, grab a white brush, and I'm going to paint it in just over the sun and in the back here. And now, this is starting to come together to look like it kind of blended in. I mean, it's not 100% realistic, but it's pretty cool looking. And what we're really after, especially on some of these plant portraits, isn't realism. It's something aesthetically pleasing to look at. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer. Okay, we're going to light our subject. And to do that, I'm going to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. I'm going to up my exposure, looking only at her. Okay, I want to get her skin tones right where I want it. I'm going to ignore everything around her. I'm going to bring my blacks down a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to mask out what I just did. White mask, Control-I to invert. And I'm just going to grab my painted on flash here, lower the opacity a little bit, and I'm just going to run it over her on the skin tones. The bugs are really bad that day, so she's got kind of some blotches we'll get off from the mosquito bite. And then we'll work through that next. But you have to do this by eye. You have to get it where you want it by eye. and I always just use a really soft brush because it just kind of blends into the image better. What you want to avoid are like burned out toes, burned out fingers, things like that. That's just a sign of really bad work. And so you want to take your time around those edges. And then we're going to get it here. This is a little over the top in terms of subject exposure, but I want to be able to see where I can paint, where I'm painting, and then I'll come through and lower the exposure on the opacity. So she blends in a little more realistic right about there, but she's still popping out better, okay? So from here, I'm going to go ahead and flatten. I'm going to come in, and we're going to look up close at skin, and we're just going to get rid of some of the bug bites. First thing I'm going to do is use my Band-Aid tool or my healing brush tool. Just paint over some of the specks and see if that works. If it doesn't, we'll use the patch tool. This works better on some of these smaller things. I'm going to grab my patch tool for her arm right there where these big patches of red are. And we're just going to move some of that out. Okay? And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come through and paint with color. We're going to paint with the saturation brush. And we're going to add color where it's important. Where the color is important is across the highlights. I also think the sky is a little dark up here. I'm just going to grab another transparent layer of white. I'm constantly looking for things that distract me. I'm going to take it across the top and lower the opacity so it just looks a little more burned out up there. Actually, sometimes strategically placed mistakes will help an image, and so that's what I'm doing up there. I don't want it to be too horribly perfect. From here, we're going to paint color where color is important, and that's going to be across the highlights. I'm going to duplicate this layer, grab my sponge tool, set to saturate, and I'm going to come across some of these highlights in here to make this a little more dynamic. Okay, make it look like the light was a little more intense when it came through. And we did this on a separate layer, so don't worry about overdoing it because we can actually lower the opacity on that, okay? So I want to keep this a little burned out up here. I'm going to check some on the sky. I think that's kind of pretty up there in the sky, just one swipe across the screen. And I'm going to go ahead and flatten this image, and we're going to go ahead and work on some things that are important like detail, okay? First thing I'm going to do is select my Ultra Sharp Details brush again. You'll see a pattern of how I work here. I do the same thing for every image. I might not do it in the same order, but I do it. And this is another thing I do. Extra Sharp Details brush, play. Okay, continue. And let's go look for what's important in this photo. I think probably, I'm not particularly fond of the stripes, but I think if we can bring those out, it's going to show that we had better focus. So I am just going to paint this over the stripes. Always stay away from skin on this. What we're trying to do here is show that we had better focus. Okay, I'm going to take it across the detail on this chair, staying away from the weeds. And then I'm going to step out. I'm going to look at it. Okay, that's pretty cool, but I am going to lower the opacity on it so it's not so over the top. I'm going to flatten it, and then I'm going to go to her eyelashes. The eyes are always really important to show that we had focus on, okay? And so I always, never anything else typically, but the eyes, I grab a sharpening tool over here on the left. Sharpening strength doesn't matter because we're going to do it on duplicate layer, so you want it high. I'm going to go ahead and just rub that over the eyelashes, and I'm going to back out, okay? From here, I'm going to flatten. I see a few specks, bugs in here, mosquitoes. I'm just going to take out with my healing brush tool. And now I'm going to paint with light like we talked about before. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer. I'm going to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and I'm going to back my exposure down this time. Whoops, that's the wrong one. Filter, Camera Raw Filter. And when I back my exposure down, details come out where we didn't know we had details, okay? And it's kind of pretty up here in the sky. I'm not real fond of the yellow, but we can always switch that to color balance later if we want. And then I'm going to up my highlights. I'm going to up my vibrance. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. This is going to put a darker layer over the top of this, but what it does is allow us to mask out what we just did, okay? Grab a black brush and paint with light. Paint to the direction of our light, which we want to make this look really localized just to the center of the scene. I'm going to switch my opacity to 100. We're painting black over a white mask, and I'm going to come down from the direction of the light. We're going to put that light just right there on the subject and through the subject plane.
Okay, I have a question. So I've seen a tutorial you did before where it was for the James Spain photo. It was online. It was like a free one, and then you did it where you adjusted the exposure in Lightroom, and then you opened up a smart object, and then you painted the light in that way. So is this a different approach to doing that exact same thing?
Yes, it is a different approach to doing that exact same thing. The thing is that Photoshop CC, the new version that you can get for $9.99 a month, has Camera Raw built right into it. So, and it wasn't until very recently that I started using it. I was still using Lightroom. But it's very easy to light it in Lightroom the same way. We just adjust our two photos in Lightroom and then bring them in, okay, and then we put one over the top of the other.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. But this is, so basically what you do is you just open up the Camera Raw.
Mm-hmm. We go up to Filter. This is Photoshop CC, okay? We go to Camera Raw, filter right here.
I have CC.
Whoops, I'm on my mask. And then you can just, it's basically Lightroom inside of Photoshop without having to save, go back in and open up. A lot of people, they still have CS5 or whatever. Even Elements, you could do this in Elements if you have Lightroom. And what's important is that you're able to mask and that you understand why we're masking. We're adding fill like flash here without having to use a flash. And that's pretty amazing because it's actually better looking. If you can imagine if we would use a flash on this, it would look horribly unnatural. We would have had this big flash here on the front of the weed. By doing it this way, we're able to light our subject realistically without the use of a flash. We're still using information that we have. We're using information that's ours. We're blending our photos, our pictures, and it's just pretty cool. So, I mean, it's up to your imagination. But if you're watching me work, I'm making adjustments to the whole image with only one part of the image in mind. And then I'll put a mask on it, and I'll just paint in where I want that effect. So I'm able to do that in Camera Raw now instead of having to take it back, because I can still do that. If I take this, go to File, Save As. I can still do that here. I can take it back into Photoshop, say if you have, or take it back into Lightroom, say if you have Elements or you have something else. I can lower my exposure here, just like that, and then go to Photo, edit in Photoshop as a smart object in Photoshop. And now I can take this image, pull it over the image we were just working on, mask it, and paint in some dynamic light. So, I mean, that I'm not really going to do that. That's over the top, but I wanted to show you that can be done.
Okay. That's
and
cool.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool. You can do it either way, but in new Photoshop CC, it's much easier to do, okay?
Yeah.
So now we have this image in Lightroom.
It takes a long time.
I'm going to go ahead and finish it out. I'm just going to duplicate. I'm going to go to Filter, Nik Collection, Color Effects Pro 4. So you don't even have to have a skyline in the photo to make it work. I mean, if you have one of these backlights, but I did this for two reasons. I also did it to show you, oh, wrong program. I also did it to show you how we got rid of that lens flare by just putting in some black. Okay, so that haze. What you have to look at a photo and say, geez, why is it hazy? What's it missing? It's not really hazy. It's missing black. So you just want to go put your blacks back in. Now, sometimes there's obvious lens flare, meaning big flares down here. There's, there's big yellow spots, there's whatever. You have to get that out with the patch tool, and it's very time-consuming. So when you're on location, you're shooting, and you know you have that, remember you're not looking through a lens, you're looking at a computer. So you have to be able to think, what can I do to this in the computer? You don't think about the moment. I never do. I'm always looking through a computer screen constantly, even when I'm on location. So if something's not fixable, that image isn't going to work. We've got to recompose. We've got to drop our subject. We've got to shoot at a different angle. Otherwise, be prepared to get that lens flare out. Know you can do it, and then you can leave. So, but this Nik Nik Color Effects Pro 4, this finish is really nice over the top. It just kind of adds a little pop to the skin tones. Watch it go at the settings that I'll give you. And and it makes the scene a little bit prettier without going too over the top. See it?
Yeah.
And so that's it. Again, this is a senior portrait. This doesn't have to be super realistic how this blends into the background, because we also get plain boring things. People looking at the camera, smiling, hand on the hip, stuff like that. This is just kind of an artistic prompt that I wanted to make to show you that it can be done. And just on how we transpose skies and how I use them and why they're blurred in camera. Okay, I mean, I could use my Alien Skin software on it. Nothing is better than the actual being blurred right out of the 8512 or whatever lens you're using, because it's going to have everything that matches the scene and the blur that's already in there. So you're going to have your specular highlights and things like that. I only use a little bit of blur on just the skyline in the back. Okay, and that's just to bring it in a little more seamlessly. We want to take detail out of this so it's not so noticeable. And then that little bit of white paint also will take some detail out, and then we end up with an image like this. So we go from there to here, and then we can come down to a sharpening in Lightroom, a little bit of noise reduction, and that's it. I have a finished image. Okay, so any questions on that?
No.
Okay. Let's take a look
So you just
I'm on Flickr, but I haven't used it in a very long time.
So 500 px is more.
Yeah, I get.
More
I mean, like I said, yeah, you get way more views. An average photo of mine, if you click on it, what's an average view, and even on 1x, but this 52,000 views on one image.
Wow.
And on Flickr, you might get 1,000 or whatever. So it really,
Wow.
500px is probably the way to go. And that tutorial that you read that I did for 500px on James Spain.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just I just fit in with them better, and not everybody will. Some people still prefer Flickr. Yeah, it's a great way to go.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so let's look through these and see if there's anything else in here you want to know how I did, or looking at some of these photos. Sky transposing. I could do a quick sun rays one. A lot of people want to know how I do my sun rays.
Oh, actually, could I see on the top row, the girl with the fur hoodie? The very first
sure. Right here?
Yeah, because that one's different from your other one.
Okay, yeah, let's see if we can't bring that in. Let me find that image.
Maybe one of the sunray ones. It'd be interesting to see how you do that. Everyone does it differently.
I think we can do both in one, okay? So let's try to do both. We'll do sun rays and snow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Let's go here. Actually, I know we won't, well, trying to look here. HIJK.
Do you call in Lightroom, or do you call before you take it? It looks like you might call in Lightroom.
I'm sorry. Could you say something? Say that again.
You're calling. Do you call in Lightroom, or do you call like before?
What do you mean by call?
Calling, like you know how like you go through your images and you select the best one.
Oh yeah, no, I go through everything in Lightroom. I took to a deep drive and I just go through everything there and it's like I use Lightroom mainly for just organization.
And do you only shoot in RAW?
I only shoot in RAW because that's all of our information. That's all of our camera information. If you shoot in JPEG, you're missing a lot of information. And so, yeah, I never shot a JPEG image in my life.
Okay, I usually shoot in both while I'm daytime.
Yeah, it's kind of a waste of information.
Yeah.
Let's come up here and look. Okay, this is how the image started out. So I'm going to pull it in. And let's see. That was a very simple image to make, and it's basically the same way we just did the other one. We just let her in post, and then we put a snow overlay on some Florabella. Let's come in here and look at some of these.
Ah, Florabella.
This is great focus. This has great focus. What's this have? I don't like the body posture in that. She's turned sideways. I'm going to make something real creative for you, okay, or just something kind of different.
Okay.
Let's grab this one. I'm going to grab these three. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make this one. We'll put some sun rays in this and make it more dynamic and fun, okay? I think what we'll do is we'll actually, because this is taken right toward the end of winter, I'm going to put a leaf falling down out of the sky. Maybe we'd be better off. I'm trying to see where her face is on this one. Yeah, okay, we're going to take this one. I'm just trying to make some decisions as far as composition. Okay, first thing I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to put a little bit of a sky in this. I'm trying to think how I would do that with these trees up in here, but maybe we can get a little bit. Let me see something here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a table. We're going to go to Image, Canvas Size, make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to grab my rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to stretch the sky up a little bit just so we have some more room to work with. Okay, we have more space to put something interesting in here now. I'm going to select and deselect. I'm going to look at a sky that I brought in. I'm getting ready to sell a sky pack. Let's see here. So I have the sky for it. I'm going to get kind of the snowy, kind of a snowy, that blurred sky. I'll show you. There it is, right here. I'm going to go to Photo, Edit in Photoshop. We're going to bring the sky in and try to use it in conjunction with those trees in the back. I want the sun over on this other side, and to do that, you can see I have a little bit of lens flare in here. Just going to take that out in case that becomes a problem. I'm going to grab my spot healing brush. And I want my sun under the side. I'm going to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Okay, and now I'm going to go to Image, Canvas Size. We're actually going to make this our background and put a bigger canvas on this, and we'll pull the other image into it. I'm going to grab it, pull it into this. Probably going to want our sun right about there. I'm going to transform that sky on the back. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to pull all the saturation out of it so it looks more blue. I can see these color tones in here. It needs to match the color in here. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustment, Saturation. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. And now you can see that yellow come out. And now we know our sun in the back behind it is going to pop in there a little bit more naturally. I'm just going to take this out. And now I'm going to move our image, probably put our sun right there. And I'm going to come back in with 100% white. Put all this back in. We need to make this bigger. So I'm going to put that all in there. Scale. Move our sun back over here. And now we can paint this in a little more realistically. I'm going to go ahead and grab this 100% white, put that sun in from behind there. Okay, just through the trees. And now I'm going to go ahead back to my other first image, and I'm going to put the darken layer to get those trees in over there better. I'm going to go to Image Adjustments, Brightness.
Hold on. My thing is frozen. I'm not seeing. Okay.
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
All right. Sorry. It just sort of caught up, but
Let's get it back to where it needs to be. So tell me when you can see me darken that layer. See if it catches up.
yeah, she's dark now.
Okay, good. That's good. So from here, I'm going to grab this. The only thing I want to do is get these darker trees in here. I'm going to take it, pull it over the top, okay, and I'm going to switch that to darken. And now our trees are starting to come in here. I'm going to lower the opacity on that darken, so it's kind of foggier like that. And now I'm going to mask it off. I'm going to go to Control-I. And I'm going to grab my white brush at 100%, and I'm just going to paint over these tree branches and down through here so it kind of leaves the sun in with a little bit of light bleed coming up through there. Okay, I'm going to go back to my foreground layer, select my black at a lower opacity because this looks kind of blue here. I'm just going to paint that in. I'm going to go back to my darken layer. It's always kind of a delicate balance. Go grab my whites at 100%. Make sure we can get some of these trees in here a little bit darker. I might have to up my opacity a little bit. Now I can come back on here, lower opacity brush, start to paint out. Now we have this kind of neat little sun coming through with this light bleed here. Okay, so we put that in. Next thing I'm going to do is crop. And let's look at it up close and see what's going on. This is really dark over in here. We can get rid of that though with a transparent layer of white. Transparent, white. Dab it over our sun at 100%. Okay, and then we can lower the opacity on that layer. And now we can take a really low opacity and just paint that white on where this really dark splotch is over here. Okay. One other thing, I want to get these trees in here better, so I am going to grab my darken layer again. From here, I'm going to make it even darker. I'm going to go to Adjustments, Brightness, because it's too broke up. Okay. And I'm going to pull this layer in here again, the darken layer, try to get those trees in a little better there in the back. Switch my layer to darken. A little bit better. Image Adjustments, Brightness. I'm going to lower the brightness until that comes in right about there. And now I'm going to mask that out, Control-I. I'm going to grab my white brush, lower opacity, and just kind of paint some of these in here a little bit better. Okay, that's better, more realistic. And now we have this neat sky detail in the back. One more layer of thin white paint over this. Okay, so that's kind of foggier there. And now we have this neat dynamic background with this light. Okay, and we've got to check out our subject and make sure we can light her. So we're going to do that next. I'm going to go to Duplicate, Filter, Camera Raw Filter. I'm going to paint with light through the scene. I'm going to up the exposure on it. I'm going to down the blacks. Okay, and I'm going to mask off what I just did, Control-I. I'm going to grab my white brush, start from my light, and bring it through the child. Whoops, 100% opacity. Okay, and now from here I'm going to paint 100% on, so we're going to light her. And we'll probably light her a little more to bring out some of the details in this blue. But you can see the composition of this start to come together gradually, right?
Yeah.
And we haven't really added anything. Now let's work on bringing, we've got our background down. Let's bring something into the subject. Let's start to make her look a little bit better. She's got really chapped lips. This is my friend's daughter. And so she's been like putting her lips over here. We're going to fix that on the skin, and we're just going to fix the skin with a spot hewing tool. Okay? And then this, I'm going to come through and get rid of this definite line. And then I'm going to grab a transparent layer. I'm going to go to my paint. I'm going to sample this color on her lip that looks normal. Grab my brush at 100% opacity, and I'm going to paint over the red. Okay, and I'm going to start to blend, and then we're going to lower the opacity on what we just did so a little bit of that detail starts to come through. That's a little more natural looking right there. From here, we're going to clean the skin up a little more. See a spot here. Probably a dimple there, but I'm going to take it out. It's distracting. Spot under the nose. Okay? And now we're going to work on bringing detail out on her. I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. I'm going to up the exposure. I'm going to work on bringing some detail out in this clothing here. So I'm going to up the exposure on this, lower my saturation, and I'm going to Control-I and invert that, and I'm going to grab a white brush, and we're just going to paint over the clothes. I want to see more detail in the clothes. I don't think it's important we see any more in her face. But this blue is kind of pretty right here. So, and then I think I'm going to take some of that light and separate her from the background a little more by just going around the fur. Because we're going to put some snow in here and a little bit of leaf. I'm going to stay away from sun rays on this one, I think, or I might just put a few in the back, coming down behind to light her. Other thing I want to do is now I'm going to take a black brush to make sure we didn't have any haloing around her. I'm just going to go around the edges, because when we go to lower the exposure on this, it'll really show the haloing bad. And now we got to figure out what she's looking at. So I'm probably going to put a leaf in there, a leaf mixed with snow, almost like it's the last leaf falling. I've done a few things like that. And I think if she's looking at a leaf that's right up here, it's going to be pretty cool. First thing I'm going to do, though, is put some sun rays in the back. So I'm going to go to Duplicate, Polygon Lasso tool, okay? And from the direction of our sun, I'm going to start painting these on. This may work, it may not. We'll make the decision once we see it. Okay, I'm going to come through here. And again, I'm just using a simple Polygon Lasso tool everywhere we hit and tap. This is where we're going to have a sun ray. So I'm going to come up here like this. I'm going to go ahead and close that off. And I'm going to hit a mask. After I hit that mask, you can see right here our sun ray pattern. I'm going to go to Edit, Fill. Color I'm going to choose is white, and I'm going to hit OK. From here, I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, and I'm going to go to Radial Blur. And I want Spin, okay? And I want Best Quality. And then I'm going to take the center point here and put it roughly where our sun is in this photo. I'm going to move it up. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK.
Why do you choose Radial Blur?
I'll show you, because Radial Blur is going to fan it out like a radial. Now, if I was doing straight sun rays, I would just do a motion blur that goes straight through it. But we actually have a circular thing here. You see how it's circular? The rays are coming out from a circular place. And so we need to use radial for that. Otherwise, I'd use motion blur, which would go straight through it. But when we use motion blur on these and it's a circle, it'll warp the side. So I'm just going to wait for this to render. There it is. Okay. Now, from here, we can see it start to come out. It's okay. It's not great. I'm going to lower the opacity on it quite a bit. I want it extremely subtle, probably right about, I don't even want it 25. I want it fairly noticeable, but up in here, okay? And from here, I'm going to go ahead and go to my black mask. I'm going to grab my black brush at 100%, and I'm going to get it off of my subject. All of that white paint off of my subject. Now, you have to be really careful in this because of the opacity and the things we're using, we can't go back in and just paint white on it if we halo. So we want to just stay really nice sharp edges on this. Okay, but now we have this nice blur in the back, okay, and this nice little bit of sun ray. I'm still going to lower it. I want it to be barely noticeable. Now, from here, we're going to do one other step to make that a little more realistic looking. Well, I'll make sure we got all that white paint off, because that'll really be a pain when we come back in. And then I might put this on 500 px. And make sure we got those edges really well. We got that all off, so I don't see anything else. From here, we can see our light rays in the back. I am going to grab a transparent layer of white. And just one more to blend those in so they're not so obnoxious. I'm going to take this 100% white, put it over our sun right there in the back, come in and look at it, and then I'm going to lower the opacity on it. And that kind of blends in and shows a little more light bleed coming through that. Now let's find something for her to look at before we put on our snow overlay. I'm going to go to Jessica's leaf overlays here.
Is it Jessica Drawson?
Yeah, Jessica Drawson's leaf overlays. And I'm going to try to find a leaf, but that's too flat. That's not going to work. We got to get something a little more realistic, probably from the side that was just kind of falling down. That looks like it came out of the jungle. That's not going to work. It's Nebraska. Need something. This is good, but it's a little not enough detail. I think this is nice here. We're going to take this leaf, pull it into the scene. Okay, it's going to be huge. And I'm going to go ahead and go to Edit, Transform, Scale, and I'm going to get it a realistic size to where you can still see a little bit of detail. I'm just going to have her looking at it. So we're going to get it right about up here. Again, I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Scale, a little smaller. And I want to see if this even looks like a leaf in there. We might have to have something that looks a little more like a leaf. That just looks like a piece of trash. So I'm going to select a different one. That's not enough detail. That's not a sad leaf. This stem is okay. We might just have to go to a really just flat out looking leaf. Like this. Yeah, that's going to work. Okay, so I'm going to Edit, Transform, Scale. I'm going to move this down. And I might move it. I'm going to rotate it. Rotate. Probably right about there. I don't know. Can you tell that's a leaf?
Yeah, it looks like a leaf to me.
Okay, cool. So it looks like a leaf, so that's good. We're good there. And I'm going to look at adjusting. I got to get my layers palette back. Window layers. Let's look at adjusting the brightness on it. I'm going to go to Image Adjustments, Brightness, and see where it's going to switch into the screen here. Image Adjustments, Brightness. Program error. Oh, that's not good. Okay, something else. Edit, Transform, Scale. Filter, Camera Raw filter. Just going to lower, make it a little darker, up the highlights a little bit. Now let's come back in and look at it. I want it to be a little more contrasty like that. Probably. Yeah, I might have to separate that from the background a little bit, maybe put a little bit of motion blur on it. I haven't figured it out. But from here, I'm going to go ahead and flatten it. Come up and look. I'm going to take a transparent layer, another spot of white, very soft. I'm going to dab it over here where the sun rays are on this, okay? And I'm going to lower the opacity. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to separate this leaf a little bit better from this background, okay? And I'm going to do that by taking the white paint off of it. I'm going to grab some white paint at 100% opacity and very, with a black brush, go around the edges really carefully to show that this is a leaf and it doesn't blend in with the background as much. Yeah, devil's in the details. So I'm going to come around here and just kind of come around this. And then we're going to back it out and look at it and see if we're on to something. Okay, let's look. Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. It's giving it more depth by doing that when we separate it from the background. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is come in and I'm going to look at lowering the exposure. I'm going to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, lower my exposure here, up my highlights. Okay. And I'm going to mask out what I just did. I'm going to control I. This is going to, oh, whoops, no, I'm not. I'm going to paint with black, actually. I'm just going to paint with black again from the light through the subject at 100% and kind of hit that leaf, make it a little more about her. And then across the subject plane, focus plane, another hit of light right here. And this almost brings a little bit of the leaf out. It brings out a little bit more. I think this is kind of dark over here, distracting, so I'm going to paint some light there. And now, let's add some snow. We're going to put some snow in this. I think one thing we better do first is sharpen some details on this. So I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to go to Jessica's extra sharp detail brush, hit play, continue, grab my white brush, and everywhere I paint, detail is going to come out. We have this really pretty 1.2 focus plane down here. I want to come out of this image because it's going to show depth of field and give us more depth in the photo. Whoops. Across the focus plane, over the clothes, especially the fur. The fur in this is pretty cool. I'm going to get some haloing around there, but that's okay because I'm going to lower the opacity and take some of it off of just the edges. Now I'm going to lower the opacity on what I just did so it looks more realistic like that. And let's just try a little bit on our leaf here, see if it doesn't halo it. I think that's pretty nice. Maybe a little overdone. We'll take a paintbrush and take some of that out. When I'm shooting, I'm always having these kids look places because I know, again, I'm looking at a computer screen, and she's looking at nothing. She doesn't know that. She's just having fun. But I know that I have other things I can put in this scene to make it more interesting like this. And so that's kind of how I shoot. Other thing I'm going to do here is add some more depth to that background where that road goes. I'm going to go ahead and grab my white brush, 100% opacity, and dab at the end of that road right there, almost like there's kind of wind blowing through or that light is settling in this valley. Okay, and then I'm going to lower the opacity on that because when we add snow, that's going to help a lot. From here, I'm going to flatten this image. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of blur on this just to make it a little more realistic. And this is strategically placed mistake. We want to make it look like we didn't quite have focus on the leaf, but we had it on her. So I'm going to go Alien Skin Bokeh. I'm going to put a really light, very, very light blur on this. So it's almost not noticeable. If this is too snappy, it's not going to sell it. Doesn't mean we want it to look realistic, but we want it to look reasonably realistic. So I put a little bit of blur over that. I'm going to do this, Control-I to take the blur off, and then I'm going to paint that little bit of blur on this leaf. It's a very subtle difference, but it puts it into this background a little more believably. And now I'm going to sharpen her eyes. I'm going to go ahead, different layer here. I'm going to duplicate the layer, and I'm going to get my sharpening tool from over here on the left-hand side, and I'm going to sharpen the eyes. Okay, I might even run a little bit up through this fur here. I think those details are important. And we're going to back out, and it's going to look like we had much better focus on her. And now I've got a snow overlay for Florabella. I'm going to grab it. These are very simple to use. All I do is I'm probably going to grab this one for now. Go to Open in Photoshop. I'm going to grab this and take it into our working image, put it over the top of it if I can find it. Okay, and then I'm going to Edit, Transform, Scale. I'm going to flip the screen. I'm going to change my blending mode to Screen. Okay, and you can see it's kind of pixelated. It's ugly looking. That's okay. We'll put a blur layer on it. I'm going to lower the opacity on it so it just looks like a little bit of falling snow like this. And I'm going to mask it out. I want a little bit of a stake in our clothing, like we did have some snow coming through here and we didn't get too lucky. I want to take it off the face. And then a lower opacity, take it off the clothes. Okay, so we still want a little bit of blur in there. From here, I'm going to go ahead and add a blur layer to this. Filter, Alien Skin Bokeh. I'll show you something cool about this. We can make this spin. Okay, so I'm going to add some bokeh to it, and we're going to go ahead and put twist on it like this, and this is what it will look like over the screen. And this will look like that neat 1.2 blur.
you shoot with a
I'm
Canon?
going to go ahead and add, yeah, Canon. I use a 5D3. And then I'm going to remove that other layer. And now we have this neat blur that's almost center of the road. You see it?
Yeah.
Now we can add some more detailed snow. This is just one layer for us. We're going to layer this so that we have another layer of snow on the focus plane. This is our blurred snow, and this is important. The other thing I'm going to do is blend in. I'm going to grab a white transparent layer here, white paint, and a few big blotches, almost like we were over our camera, some mistakes, okay, to the front. And then lower the opacity, and that'll get rid of some of these spots down here. But now this is starting to look like a sloppier snow shot, okay, just with a few of those little dabs. You can even do some up here. The best places to put them are in places that you think are too dark, okay? So I've done that. Let's grab another layer for Bella. And let's get some smaller snow this time, not that one. Let's grab this one. Open. This has a nice streak to it, okay? Grab it and take it into our image, wherever it is, right here. Okay, so we got our blurred snow. Now we need our focus plane snow. Edit, transform, scale, pull it to the side. Switch to screen, okay, and go ahead and lower the opacity on it. We just want these little tiny streaks in here, but we want them we don't want them very noticeable, okay. In fact, I'm going to mask some of this out. I don't want it over the subject or over the leaf, really. So I'm going to grab it. I think it's important maybe back in here, but around this area, I don't really want it. You can have it come up to the sides and stuff like that. And then you can just kind of dab through here because it's really uniform, and take it out in certain places in the image, especially in the front here, because if we were seeing it in the front of this lens, it would be a lot more blurred. So again, that's just to eye, okay? So we want to get that to eye, meaning we like it. 100% off of the subject. We still have a few mistakes that are going to sell it. And let's grab one more layer of exposure. Duplicate. We've lost a little bit of our sun ray detail here in the way, but we're going to fix that with Camera Raw filter by duplicating. I'm going to lower the exposure on the scene. I'm going to up my highlight. Okay, and you can start to see this all come out. I'm going to mask. I'm going to grab my black brush. I'm going to take one swipe down through the leaf and the subject. Okay, I'm going to lower the opacity. I'm going to take another swipe down through here. It's looking like we're localizing this light now, like it's just kind of, it was coming down in streaks. And then I'll look for some darker spots here. And now I'm going to flatten. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is add some color to that leaf. I don't like the color. We're going to make it a little more brighter in comparison to the composition. We're working with a royal blue here, and the complementary color of that is orange. I'm going to go to adjustments, saturation. I'm only going to look at that leaf. I'm going to up the saturation, put a little bit of orange in it, and move the tone down a little bit. And I'm going to control I, and I'm going to come up in here, and with a really we don't have to go 100% opacity. Go 56. Just paint over that leaf. We're just going to put a little more spunk into it so it pops in the scene. Okay, and then again, that's too much. It pops too much. I'm going to lower the opacity until it blends a little bit. I kind of want people to have to look at it. I'm going to stop there. Okay, and now I'm going to do a film overlay. I'm going to look at a few. I'm actually going to look at some alien skin overlays. We're going to go with alien skin exposure. You can actually buy alien skin exposure now and have it come with bokeh for, I think, $1.99. It's really reasonable. I'm just going to look through some of these colors down here and see if anything, kind of speaks to me. I think her coat's a little bit blue. I'm going to look at this old Kodachrome slide frame preset. I like the colors, but I don't like the border and all that crap. I'm going to come down here and lower the grade strength. I'm going to take off the border. I'm going to take off dust and scratches. I'm going to look at the blur, because these presets are all kind of, it does a lot of things. And I'm going to go ahead and take this. I'm going to use this color gamut. Makes it a little darker. And now I'm going to mask some of that off. I don't mind it on the edges or back here. I think it's kind of cool, but I don't want it on my subject. Again, we're going to paint that off. It makes her skin too gray. Okay, I want it to look like this light's coming down on her through this focus plane. And then have it take some of the sting off the back here. So we only want to use it in certain areas. Let's probably add some up here to the subject plane. And finish off the same way I always finish off with just a mixed film layer, duplicate, filter, Color Efex Pro 4. Yeah, and I like that. Maybe there's a little bit too much vignette, but I like the warmer feel that it put over this. Okay, and I kind of like what it did to this leaf too. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And then I'm going to show you how, before I post this, I look for things that are distracting. And I'll show you how I look for things that are distracting in a composition and explain why I do it. And I can already see some things that I don't like about the image. And so we're going to go through and fix those. In order to find things that you find distracting in an image and an image as a whole, we have to look at it from this size. This is the size people are presented with an image, whether it be on their cell phone, whether it be on a computer screen. It ends up in a news feed. And when people see something for the first time, they generally see it at this size. This is where they make a decision whether they're going to interact with this thing or not. So I always look at it like this and see. And I see these dark spots here are really distracting to me. I don't like them. It's unpleasant. At that size, at this size, it doesn't bother me as much. I'm going to go ahead and flatten this image, and I'm going to show you how we get rid of that dark. I'm going to duplicate, go to Image, Adjustments, Invert, okay? And Invert puts everything that's the opposite in this image over the top of it, and now I'm going to lower the opacity. It's putting this almost like taking some of that black out of the sides and putting it in the opposite, and now it's not so blotchy looking, okay? I'm still going to lower it because we want a little bit of contrast on the edges, probably right about there. It also got rid of a lot of detail in the subject, but that's okay because we can put that back in where we want it by masking it out. 100% down through the subject and the leaf and put all of our blacks in. And now at this size, the subject really pops. So I think that's less distracting, and I think it's better. The other thing you can always do, too, if it was snowing out, grab a transparent layer, 100% white over the bottom, and just lower the opacity, like a little bit of fog was there. There's all kinds of things you can do. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just
okay,
watching.
Sorry. So from here, I'm going to grab black brush and just take some of that sting off the back, and I think really we're done. Now, you know, we have a decent storytelling image here. She's looking at leaf, almost like it's, I always call it, I've done several of these. I call them the last leaf of fall, the last leaf of autumn. And so, but we've really added this dynamic light in the back and the snow. We've added a leaf. I see some valuable leading lines up through here too. We didn't really have to paint with color except for on the leaf, but if we go to Lightroom and grab a gradient, bring it up to the bottom, we can accentuate some of these leading lines here that take us through the composition just by upping the clarity. Maybe about like that, and then you can get rid of some of those really contrasty shadows on the bottom by just pulling them out. And you can also, if you want to see more detail, go up here and lower the exposure on the scene. It's really up to you, the adjustments you would make onto this. But I did a lot of different things in that. So, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Oh, nothing. I'm just watching what you're doing. Could you show me that graduated filter that you added in Lightroom, though? I've never seen that before.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Lightroom, we go up here on the right-hand side, upper right-hand side, graduated filter. We click on it. We go below the image, click and hold, pull it up, okay? And it's going to, think of it as a gradient. It's going to start to kind of, for lack of a better term, it's going to piss out, the effect is, as we go up, okay? So from here, I'm going to go here, and it's going to adjust the clarity. We can adjust exposure. We can adjust all kinds of things, shadows, highlights, whatever you want. It's going to be located anywhere under this line, okay? And it's going to be the most centered right here in the middle toward the dot.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, here.
Do you use portraiture?
No, I don't use portraiture. You mean for like close-ups?
Or, yeah, can I see you edit a close-up next?
You absolutely can. So let's find one here. We got one in here somewhere. Yeah. I have some close-ups in here. I'm going to explain how I shot them. For a typical family album, okay? These kids are funny.
How many pictures do you normally give for
15. I get 15.
Okay, all right.
So I only get 15 edited, but a lot of these I have to take a lot of captures in order to get them if they're moving, okay? On these close-ups, not necessarily. It depends on the cooperation I'm getting that day. So let's take this edited image, okay? Or not unedited image. This is straight out of camera. I shot from up. I put this direct light on the back to get this really pretty bokeh, and I shoot at 1.2, okay? So we're going to go ahead and I'll edit this image, and we're going to do it the same way I did James Spain, except I'm not going to use Lightroom. I'm going to use Photoshop CC. So I'm going to edit in, okay? We're going to add our fill flash. We're only going to look at him, duplicate, filter, camera raw filter. Whoops, wrong one. I'm going to up my exposure until I like the way he looks. I'm going to bring some blacks back into it, and I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to mask that out, Control-I. Grab I call it my flash, and I'm going to paint it on the subject, leaving it really soft in the back, okay? I'm going to flatten it out, and I'm going to paint in some make-believe light bleed that makes it look like we had a little more control than we actually did of the light. So it's going to look like we controlled flare. I'm just going to dab 100% white right back there. This gives it depth, okay? That little bit just gives it depth. I'm going to mask it off, make sure it's off of the subject because I used a really soft brush. I'm going to flatten, and I'm going to get rid of the distracting color in those ears. Okay, I'm going to duplicate. Well, actually, I'm not. I'm just going to grab a transparent layer. I'm going to sample this more neutral color. Take it over the ears and lower the opacity. We still want a little bit of color, but we don't want as much as was in there. I'm going to mask that off the edges. I'm going to flatten. I'm going to clean the skin. Okay, I'm just going to grab a healing brush tool. I want texture in my skin. Typically I don't use portraiture because things look like rubber. It's got to look really realistic or I won't do it. Some people just want that. They want to look like rubber, and they want to misrepresent themselves to meet the partner. So, but that's kind of not what I do. So we're just going to do really subtly. From here, what's important about the photo? What's important, once we've gotten rid of all the other distractions, are his eyes. I'm going to duplicate, grab my sharpening tool, simple sharpening tool, and take it over the eyes. Okay, and then let's back out and look at it. I think we're going to want to add a little bit more fill flash, and then we're going to paint with some color. I'm going to duplicate. Whoops. Filter. Camera raw filter. I just wanted to come out of this a little more. I'm going to up it. Bring my blacks down. That's too much. He's overexposed, but I can use a softer transparent brush or softer brush. I'm just going to lower my transparency to 34. I'm just going to get a little more kick right in there, okay? So that's better. From there, I'm going to flatten. A lot of these smaller imperfections will come out with just some noise reduction, too, if we wanted to in Lightroom. I'm going to duplicate the layer. I'm going to go back grab my sponge tool because this was an autumn image. I want to take those autumny colors in the back and just put some more light, almost like using color, put some more light over that. And then I'm going to lower the opacity so it's not so bleh. Okay, but it's a little more interesting back there now. From here, I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to use the same filter I always use to finish. Nik Color Efex Pro 4. And that's it. And that adds some warmth to the scene. Sometimes if you feel like you went a little overboard on the skin softening too, if you did use portraiture, you can back the grain down up here and that'll add some more texture to the skin. I'm going to look at this up closely because Nik, you don't really have as much control over the grain as you do in Lightroom. So I typically add grain to Lightroom. So let's look and make sure we didn't go too overboard. No, I think that's fine. And then it looks like he's got probably a little scar under here I'm going to get rid of. And that's the difference. I'm going to save it. So big difference as we, from lighting and post. Typically, I overexpose a little bit because when they go to print, the prints always come out darker. So they're going to look kind of, on the computer screen, they're going to look kind of ooh-ah. But when you go to print, it's going to add a little more depth because this is all going to come out darker. The blacks are going to be really black. So you have to kind of think like a printer too. So I might take the blacks out of this so that when his folks get it, it's not going to look so blotchy. But that's how I do a close-up. I'm going to take a quick break and come back, okay?
Okay.
I'll be right back. I just got to get some more coffee.
Okay. All right. I'll go down and grab something to drink, too.
Yeah,
okay.
Cool. All right.
Okay. All right.
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, geez, I was muted the whole time. I'm like waiting for you. Gee,
Oh,
my
yeah,
gosh.
okay.
I'm
Yeah, I've
sorry.
been here.
Oh, that's brutal. Okay, well, I owe you another photo, so what are we going to do?
Okay, hold on, let me close the door. Hello?
I'm here.
Hello?
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 Esther?
Yeah, okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. All right, so what are we going to do?
Actually, can I see you edit the James Bain photo?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Okay. I'm sure you probably edit this one a lot. But.
Yeah, not so much anymore, but I'm getting good at it. Here, let me pull in the raw file for that. Let's see here, where is it? I think this is it. Yeah, this is it. So, okay. Grab it, bring it in. So I'm going to go ahead and reset it, okay, because this is the cropped version. This is what it looks like right out of camera. I had my lens hood was loose, so you can see some kind of vignetting over here on the corners. So the first thing I did is I want to get rid of that vignetting, so I decided to crop. Okay, so I crop here, and I straighten it out. The composition on this is really pretty cool because we have a lot of intersections. We've got a line, which I think is, somebody should remove that, but I would never remove it. It's a pretty valuable leading line coming out of the corner that goes straight to the center of the composition right here. Okay, you have an intersection here on the rule of third, intersection here, and this little telephone pole, you have another intersection, not to mention it goes straight through the quadrant. So that's my composition for the image, okay? Next thing I did was I wanted to see more sky because when I was there, that sky was super dramatic, okay? And in Lightroom, all I do, and I am going to do this in Lightroom before I take it in, and it's just a way I'm used to editing this image. I'm going to up my clarity all the way. I'm going to do that with the intent of bringing this cloud detail out in the sky in the back. Do you see it?
Yeah.
That was a huge, oh, you can see it smaller. It's a huge change. And I'm going to take that into Photoshop. I'm going to edit in Photoshop CC. Okay, so there's that one. Let's go back to Lightroom. I'm going to cancel out what I did. I'm going to lower the clarity, and we're only going to expose for James. We've got to get James where we want him. We're missing a lot of eye detail. I'm going to up my exposure right to there, and I'm going to go to Photo, Edit in Photoshop CC. I'm not going to do, we don't have to do anything like a canvas size on this or anything. I'm going to grab my sky, which is here, my clarified sky, take it, pull it in over James. I'm going to mask, grab my black brush, widen 100%, paint it over James, and here he starts to come in, okay? Smooth on the shirt. We've got a little bit of haloing down here on the road, and I really only want that clarity on the sky. I'm going to lower my exposure and take some of this clarity out of the road and out of the corner. Okay, and then just make sure I don't have any burnt areas on the clothing up in here and in the hair. I'm looking at my mask here. I want to make sure I didn't miss any spots, so I think I did. That's it for that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on James, okay? And I'm going to work on those eyes because their eyes were pretty piercing. And to do that, I'm going to dodge and burn. Now, to dodge and burn, I take a transparent layer. I go to Edit, Fill, so I don't affect any color, and I take a 50% gray layer, and I put 50% over the top. From there, I switch to Overlay. Okay, my blend mode goes to Overlay, so now we can see through where we burn. From here, I'm going to come over and grab my Dodge tool. Dodge is going to bring out highlights. We set it to highlights, exposure to 100. It doesn't matter how strong that is because we can lower the opacity on this layer. And I'm going to take it over the highlights, and you can see them start to come in the eye. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten, and I'm going to grab my sharpening tool, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to sharpen his eyes until they start to come out right there. And I'm going to do one other adjustment. I'm going to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. I'm going to up the exposure to see even more eye detail. Here, and I'm going to bring my blacks down just a little bit. I'm going to mask out what I just did, Control I. Grab my white brush to show what I just did underneath of it. Okay, I'm going to go over the eye sockets here. I'm going to switch back to black, lower my opacity, and take those kind of dark rings out, but leave the 100% on the eye. I'm going to lower the opacity on that so it's not such a huge effect. Okay. And then I'm going to flatten. I'm going to bring out the texture in his hair on the beard. I'm going to duplicate. Grab the sharpen tool. Take it over the hair on the beard and the hair here. And then I'm going to lower the opacity on that so we can't see these fragments. And then I'm just going to take a thin layer of sharpening over the skin texture. Okay, we're going to back out. I'm going to flatten this image. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to come up with a Band-Aid, or the spot healing tool. I'm just going to go over some of these spots on the shirt. Okay, I'm going to duplicate again. I'm going to come back in here, and I remember a yellow line coming across the back when we were there because the sun was actually setting in behind it. I'm going to flatten this layer. I'm going to duplicate it. Grab my sponge tool, set my saturation. I'm going to take it across that yellow line just to get a little more what looked like light coming through there in the back. Okay, I'm going to lower the opacity on that so it's not so banded. I'm going to flatten it, and I'm going to switch to my Nik layer, duplicate, filter, Nik collection, Color Efex Pro 4. Ah, wrong one. Come on. Up the brightness a little bit, down my vignette. I want kind of a little more darker corners on this. Take the saturation down. Lower brightness again. One more crop because I can still see a little bit of lens hood down here. Take it into Lightroom. I see some colors I don't like, and I see a lot of red in his face. And I actually want a little more black in this. I want it to look like his head just kind of floating on this black. I'm going to lower my blacks. When I do that, I'm going to have a lot of color come out, and I don't necessarily like that color, the red. I'm going to go down to Lightroom, select red. I'm going to take the saturation and pull the red down out of his face, only the red, okay? And to make his face pop more, I'm actually going to up the luminance. So it'll take all that red and make it lighter. Okay, it'll up the exposure only on the red. Now, from here, I'm going to come down. I'm going to over sharpen it. Most times you don't want to do that on people because it's going to make them look older. We want James to look older in this. So we can even come up and accentuate some of those lines in space with a clarity bump on the entire image if we want, and then take some of these shadows out. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Sorry. Hold on.
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, I hear you now. It's just I'd lost you for a second.
Wonder what happened. Okay, yeah, it might have been the internet. So where'd you lose me on the clarity adjustment?
You were saying that you were going to over sharpen it, and then I lost you after that.
Yeah, I'm going to over sharpen it, and because I want to accentuate the wrinkles in James' face. Typically, you don't want to do that to a client. You know what I mean? But that's part of the appeal of this image. And then you can also come up and mess with the clarity on this. So if you want to add a little bit of warmth to this in Lightroom too, you can come down to split tone, choose your highlights and split toning, and just come to this kind of orange color here and see how it just adds a little bit of warmth. You don't want to overdo it, but it'll take an added warmth to the highlights, and then you can lower, just get it right to where you want it. I don't think we typically need it in this image. I can't remember if I used it or not, but it's really that simple to make this photo. We just added the flash that wasn't there, and I think it looks better than if we would have had a flash. You can put a little bit of vignette around the sides, and that's it. That's Aging Storm. One other thing you could do is grab your gradiated filter, come up here at the corner, and make that sky look even more dramatic by upping the clarity, lowering the exposure, and then up your highlight.
Yeah.
And there you go. And so looking at this up here in the upper left hand, whoops, I don't want to do that. That's it. So that's a reason you shoot in RAW, because if I had shot it in JPEG, there's no way I would have been able to do this. Your exposure doesn't even matter when you shoot in RAW, because you have all that information. The camera grabbed it while you were there, no matter what the exposure looks like in your camera. I mean, it gets to a certain point where it's so overexposed the camera didn't grab it, okay? But it's always important. It's always better to underexpose a little. And that's what happened in the scene. But knowing I was shooting in RAW, I didn't really care about my exposure because I knew I could come back and do this. Yeah. And the moment was way more important than the exposure. So just make sure you're getting the moment. You can adjust the exposure later if you're shooting in RAW.
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. And that's another reason I'm able to use minimal camera equipment. I have one lens, one camera. I don't use any reflectors. I don't own a flash. I literally have a camera, a strap that goes on the camera, and a lens. No tripod, nothing. That's how I shoot everything. Because I know that when I get back, I have to stay mobile, especially when I'm photographing kids. It's the moment that's the most important thing. And I know that everything else can be adjusted when I get home. So that's it. I mean, what did you get out of it?
I don't know. You have a very different approach. It's interesting watching.
Yeah, I do have a very different approach. But I think that approach is, I think it's benefited a lot of people. I mean, because I think it's, it can keep it minimal and to know that you don't have to have all that stuff.
Yeah,
and
it's interesting.
So, yeah, I don't know, but that's just how I do it. And it seems like I put a lot of work into an image when I'm with the students, but honestly, I don't. I'm so fast at it, and with you, I'm even doing things that I don't need to do. I'm just showing you that it's possible to do them. So maybe it takes me 10 minutes to edit an image. I could edit this image right now in about 3 seconds. It just boom, 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 boom. So, and a lot of it goes by eye, and I'm adjusting certain things in the image for a reason. I'm constantly looking at the image and seeing where my eye is going. If my eye is coming off the page, I want to make sure it doesn't go off the page. What will typically take you off the page is detail, so I want to get rid of that detail. And I want to put detail where I want my eye drawn back to, because the eye is always drawn to detail first and foremost. And then we subtly use other things like leading lines, like in this image, to take us through the photo, not just keep us here, but take us through it. So back up here, what is down that road? Your mind starts to think, and then you go back to James, and then you look into the road again. And so that's keeping us in here. We don't really have a reason to come off of the page.
Yeah.
And that's just my thought process. So it's constantly, my mind's constantly going, what's going to keep us in this photo? What's taking me out? Zooming in, zooming out, looking at it from every possible perspective, how it's going to be presented to what people are going to think when they get up close.
Yeah. So for the second half of our meeting, what's going to happen there?
Well, this is what I like to happen. we work on your photos. So you go out, you try some of these techniques that you've done, you load some raw files up in a Dropbox for me and get them to me so that we have them when we're ready. And then I'll download the photos, and we start to go through. You can pre-edit them. You can do whatever you want to, and then we go over the edit. I can tell you what I would change, what I wouldn't change about it, what I like about it, what I don't. It's really up to you. So, but I would rather work on your images in the second half. Okay, you've seen how I do things, and that's why it's important. And then you'll have this recording. So you can go out, and again, you don't have to get on a road. You don't have to do anything. I can work with pretty much anything, meaning if you don't like the style of portraiture or you have a style that you're used to but you just couldn't quite get it to pop, I can look at it and tell you what it's missing.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Okay, all right, that'd be cool. So should I schedule that meeting with you now?
Yeah, why don't we?
So
let me grab my book.
Next time? So that'll be the last.
Grab it. I mean, did you like this? Did you feel like you got something out of it?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
It's interesting to see different approaches on how different artists do something, and then you guys are all sort of doing the same thing, just in a completely different way.
Correct.
Or not,
yeah, but there's
very similar things. A lot of you.
Yeah, there's a million different things to do. Million different ways to do one thing in Photoshop. So.
Yes.
And it depends, because when you're taking all the best from the people that you like or the people you follow, you take the things that work for you from each one of them, and so it's very different.
Yes. Very interesting.
So should we look at February? January is completely booked for me, but I could do February. I have days open like I have. Is there a day that works best for you?
What about the 22nd?
I do have the 22nd. That's a Sunday. Yes.
Yeah. At what time?
The same, 11:45.
Okay.
So let's see, Esther. How do we spell your last name? I'm sorry.
It's Miao, M-I-A-O.
Yeah. Okay, M-I-A-O.
You didn't pronounce it as like the cat's meow.
Okay, cool. 820-1982, 11:45 CST.
Yeah.
Second tutorial. We're good to go. It's going to take me a couple days to get this converted for you and then load it to Dropbox. So if I forget, just message me and remind me, okay? But I typically I set them on convert, and then I can go do something else I forget. But I will get it in the Dropbox, and I'll just send you a link.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. Happy New Year. I'm very appreciative. And, get some stuff together for me. Get some concepts. And nothing silly. It's not a pissing contest. I'll help you through it.
Okay. Well, about how many pictures should I plan on sending you? Like 10, 15?
As many as you want. And then as many as we have time for, but
okay.
Take whatever you want and get as much together for me as you can. Like I said, I'm not just going to say, time's up. So let's just get it worked out, okay?
Okay, all right. That'd be cool. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, bye.
Bye.